would like to call to order the special meeting of the Police Commission Monday, September 19, 2022. We'll start by the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on our agenda is comments from the public. I don't know that there's any public here, but I don't know if we have anybody online. Are there any hands raised online?
Is Larry doing it remotely, or
Yes.
Larry's doing it remotely?
Yes. Larry, do we have anybody with hands raised?
There's nobody with their hands raised.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll move on. Next is going to be our commission workshop from the school resource officers.
Great, thank you very much. Before we start, do we want to see if any of the other two principals are on the public
So
attendee list?
Krista's on, and Heston, I asked him if he'd be able to contribute by phone since he has no power. He hasn't responded yet, but I can make that possible.
Do we know if Krista's promoted to a speaking role?
To go to participants down the bottom. Go to attendees.
Want to go to
Bachman
panelists?
right there.
Yeah, so we got to promote her.
She's got to be promoted. And I don't know if you can do that or if Larry has to do that.
We're looking to Kristen DeCapua.
To Bachman.
If you could
Hey,
promote her.
Bachman.
Oh, Bachman. Okay, either one of us should be able to do that, but I went ahead and did it. They should be coming on. Is there anyone else?
See any other Board of Ed members?
George Chang is on. We could elevate George.
Yeah, here's the attendees.
Okay. So
That's it.
we need panelists, right? They need to become panelists.
These are your attendees.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, Madam Superintendent. Just thank you for allowing us to use your fine facility today for this meeting. I want to welcome the Board of Education members that are in attendance, as well as our school administrators. So this month's workshop we talked about would be on our school-based policing program. And so as you can see, we have plenty of staff here. We're going to divide up the presentation as the night goes. I hate doing that. The next slide. Can you put our presentation up there? Bam, go right to the next slide if you would. Fantastic. So as the commission remembers, after that horrific incident at the Robb Elementary School and the complete failure of local law enforcement when responding to that incident, I sent the Police Commission and the Board of Selectmen, as well as the superintendent, a letter on May 29th, 2022. And I know the superintendent then forwarded that on to her board members. In that letter, I expressed my deep concern for the failure of law enforcement that day and felt it was very necessary to address the issue, both with my superiors on the Police Commission, certainly with the Board of Selectmen and our superintendent of school. Most importantly, I thought it was very important to remind you and explain to you what we do as an agency, how we prioritize school safety, and how I feel that we are ready because we have various things in place. We have the proper personnel, the proper professional development, the proper response plans, and the proper equipment to respond to any type of crisis in town, including into our school buildings. And so I thought that as we started off the school-based policing program, I would remind the commissioners of what a significant priority school safety is for us each and every day of the academic year, each and every day that there are students and staff on any one of our campuses. And when we talk about school safety, we talk about two main concepts. First one being kids have the right to feel safe. And so we know through Maslow's hierarchy of needs that if you do not feel safe, if you are not comfortable, you'll never be able to learn. And so students need to be sitting in their classroom and feel safe. They need to feel as safe, if not safer, than they are when they're at home because they're certainly well protected. And the staff has the right to feel safe. And the horrific incidents that have happened around the country, certainly the terrible tragedy that happened right here in Connecticut, is always on the back of the minds of all of our dedicated educators as they're trying to teach their curriculum. And it's certainly on the back of every single parent's mind as they either put their son and daughter on the bus or drop them off at school, and they entrust others, the Board of Education professionals and law enforcement professionals, our school resource officers in the building, to make sure that the most important thing to them returns home safe in 6.5 hours. I just want to let you know that we take that very seriously. Next slide, please. So here's an overwork on how our workshop agenda will work tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about school campus safety, security, and our emergency exercises that we do. Then I'm going to ask Captain DePerry to talk about crisis response and our professional development that we do to make sure that we know how to properly respond to any crisis at school. I'm going to have Patrolman Dwyer go over some of the equipment that we carry. If you remember from that horrific incident in Texas, there's a question of whether or not law enforcement had the proper equipment. I want the Police Commission and the Board of Education and the public watching to know that we do and show them the equipment that we have in every single one of our patrol cars. I'm going to have Sergeant Mykowski, who's our primary evening shift supervisor, talk about school safety investigations when something comes in after hours and we have to make sure that school is ready to open and open safely the very next academic day. Then we're going to hear from our dedicated school resource officers, Patrolman Gavinelli from the high school, Patrolman Scott Oresco from the middle school, and Patrolman Lawrence Rooney from the Goodwin Elementary School. Then our dedicated principals, little principals corner, we have Mr. Anastasio, Mrs. Bachman, and hopefully Mr. Sutman will be joining us. I'm going to talk a little bit about associated costs with the work that we do for the schools. Then I'm going to ask the superintendent to make some final remarks, and then I'll just do some quick concluding of the presentation, and then we'll open it up to Police Commission and Board of Education members, questions, comments, ideas, concerns, et cetera, et cetera. Go right to the next slide, and we're going to go back to that one. Perfect.
We're trying to get Heston.
Trying to get Heston in?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure, he is listed as.
So while we're doing that, let me talk a little bit about our school campus safety, security, and emergency exercises. So the superintendent of schools has what's called a secure campus philosophy. That means that during the academic day, all exterior doors to all of our public school facilities are closed and locked. There should never be an opportunity for someone to pull on an exterior door at any one of our schools and walk inside, based on our school secure campus philosophy. The interior doors of our classroom are locked at all times, and whether they're ajar or not is a classroom management decision on the instructional leader, the teacher in the classroom. And by the way, the things I'm talking about tonight are very public. We talk to the kids about them, we talk to the staff about them, and it's nothing that we don't want people to know. There are some things in our response plans that I will not disclose publicly for all the right reasons. There are 3 main drills or codes or statuses that we give the kids to learn and the staff to learn. They are a lockdown, which is our code red, a you're safe but stay in place, which is a code yellow, and an evacuation of the campus, which is a code green. Each one of these procedures was developed in conjunction in a very collaborative manner between local law enforcement and the district's leadership team. And every year these are reviewed, if need be revised, and then disseminated to staff through the office of the superintendent. Everyone actually has to sign off that they get them. The 3 sheets, red, yellow, and green, are posted in every single classroom, and teachers are asked at every level to explain to their students and detail expectations during any one of those emergencies. So let's first talk about a lockdown. Oftentimes, and it always drives me a little nutty, you'll hear a news reporter saying there's a bank robbery down the street and so-and-so elementary school went into lockdown. That should not be the case. So based on our secure campus philosophy, all exterior doors are always locked. If the bank down the street gets robbed, the only thing we're worried about is, are the kids outside for recess? And is there an outdoor educational activity going on? If there is, we ask them to go inside. But the academic day continues because all exterior doors are locked. The kids are safe, the teachers can do what they need to do, and the kids can learn. A lockdown is specific to something bad happening inside the building, inside the 4 walls of the school. And when that takes place, teachers have procedures that they'll follow to make sure that the kids are safe. Law enforcement knows how to respond to that type of scenario. And as the captain will talk about, find the person who's person or persons who's causing the problem. And we know how to evacuate classrooms that are safe. We developed this code yellow, this your safe, stay in place, for times when there's something going on. You don't have to stop the academic day, but we don't necessarily want people in the hallway. So that would be a teacher's ill or a student's ill, or there's a student discipline thing going on in the hallway. Not everyone needs to be a looky-loo and find out what's going on. So we keep them in their classrooms, teachers keep teaching, kids keep learning, staff handles what they need to handle, the code yellow is lifted, and the academic day continues on the normal schedule. And then our code green campus evacuation is, we need to leave. The school campus is unsafe. We need to take the entire population of that school campus and relocate them somewhere. Take attendance and then possibly relocate them to a secondary position to either keep them safe, bless you, or to do some sort of organized dismissal to the parents. So those are our three codes. One stops the academic day, a code red, a lockdown. Something bad's going on in the building. Code green, get out of Dodge, academic day stops. We have to relocate the entire population of the school. And then our code yellow, something's going on, not major, we'll deal with it, academic day continues. I get to meet with every single staff member prior to the start of school. So before school starts, I get welcomed to faculty meetings at all three of our schools. Within the first month of school, I meet with all of our clerical staff that literally has the finger on the button of the safety of the school. And we go over all these codes. We go over safety expectations for the year. And we talk about some of our school safety drills and what our expectations are of school staff during those school safety drills. We then go on and each month by state statute have a school safety drill. It can either be a fire drill, it can be a lockdown drill, that code red, or it can be a campus evacuation drill. I personally, as the police chief and emergency management director and a delegate of the fire department, go and observe those drills, provide feedback to the administrators, which sometimes there could be an on-the-spot correction, and then I provide feedback to the office of the superintendent in case she needs to talk to her leadership team about that. Everything is timed, and what we're really checking for is not getting everyone out of the building very quickly, which is important. The most important thing is student and staff accountability. Because if it was a real incident and we pull up, I need to look at a school administrator and say, do we have anyone? Who are we missing? Whether that's a fire emergency, an aggressive subject or active shooter, or campus evacuation due to a chemical leak in the science lab. Student and staff accountability is paramount to public safety leaders running an incident. So these drills, again, happen throughout the year. And I also, with the school resource officers, will periodically check the campuses. Pull into a school, go on the side of the building, tug on the door. Make sure that the superintendent's secure campus philosophy is being adhered to, because, as we saw in Texas, one simple moment can lead to a complete tragedy. So following the secure campus philosophy literally saves lives during the day. Speaking of saved lives, we have a very robust professional development program on how we prepare for and the training on what we would do if we had to respond to a crisis at one of our schools. So I'll have the captain discuss that. Cap?
Thanks, Chief. So I do have the honor of instructing our law enforcement professionals in active aggressor, active shooter training annually. In 2013, I went to a national school with state, federal, and local law enforcement officers to instruct me how to instruct our department on how to standardize a response to an active aggressor in specifically a school setting, but it can translate to any setting across the board. So I brought that back to the agency. The chief was aware, obviously it was a national program to set standards so that any one of our police officers could stand next to any police officer, federal, local, state, from anywhere in the country, and we would know what each other is going to be doing when we enter that type of situation. When you drill those situations, we're talking about vulnerable populations, our school population being our most vulnerable and valuable asset in the community. We take school safety. It's our number one priority in the police department. So when we have an issue at the school, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, it becomes the number one priority of the agency. We work well with Superintendent Peruccio and the board of at all school, everybody at the schools. So once we are involved in a situation, everybody kind of knows what to expect. When we do respond to a crisis, our police officers have training which begins at the end of July every year and culminates in an August training in all three schools. This year, we were fortunate enough to have 2 days worth of training, which greatly helps. And I know it's August, it's a couple days before school starts. It's a little bit difficult getting into the school to get this training done. All the teachers are trying to get their classrooms ready. The janitors are trying to make the school spick and span so for the first day of school, and they allow us in. So a lot of collaboration, and we thank Superintendent Peruccio and her team for allowing us in the schools to get this training done. But we start from the ground up. So our police officers start with building search techniques from the ground up. We train for 1 month at roll calls. Our sergeants lead those trainings. I kind of oversee that, and we follow that national standard, that national model. And once August, the end of August, before school comes, we practice these tactics, crisis response tactics, including all the tools that you see and that you're going to be shown by Patrolman Dwyer. We carry these, we wear these in the school, so it is live training. It is obviously no ammunition, but we utilize all of our tools and make sure that we're ready and we're prepared, not only physically with the X's and O's of building search and room clears, but also mentally, because I think mental preparation is probably more important than the physical preparation that we do. So we try to build a mindset with our police officers so that they know exactly what the person standing next to them is going to be doing. They know their role, they know their responsibility. And if that time ever comes, hopefully it never does, we are prepared both mentally and physically. Again, we value the time in the schools because it gives our police officers time to get in there and know every nook and cranny of every single school in town. And it's vitally important. We do maybe not the typical drills that you would think, but we play hide the ball in a classroom, and we make sure that our police teams go through every classroom and find every single object that we tell them that they need to find, so that they know these schools in and out. They know the tactical nuances of each and every school, and it is the most valuable part of the training, is getting in those schools and doing that training. So again, thank you, and we appreciate that. And anything else you want me to add, Chief?
No, so, you know, on the emotional component, as you know, we have a young staff, right? So if you're a police officer with kids, you probably see the world differently than if you're a police officer that doesn't have kids at home. And so it's important for us as law enforcement leaders to make sure there is the emotional connection to the why of what we're doing. And so we've brought speakers in before that were actually at the Sandy Hook disaster. We've had the school administrators speak to the staff about how they're important to them right prior to the training. So we always try to find some sort of element to tie in the social emotional part of the professional development. But as it says on the screen, our job during an aggressive subject or an active shooter incident is to enter the school, stop the threat, and save lives without delay. And I need you to know that your Old Saybrook police officers are ready to do that, and they're committed to doing that. There is not one member on my staff that has not gone through the exercise of mentally preparing themselves and visualizing that most horrific day that I hope never happens, about what they would do and how they would do it to save kids' lives. Ashley, would you go 2 forward for me? Great. So I'll hit this off early. Obviously, there's associated costs to what we do. And every year, Julie's always on me to write that in-kind report. It's a mandated state report that talks about, what the municipal side of the house, if you will, does, I guess, for free or not for free, how you want to put it, for the Board of Education side. And so this board should know, as you do through the budget process, we dedicate about $195,000 of our budget to serving the school district. Now, that is perfectly correct. We should be doing that. We shouldn't be talking about whose budget it's in, because I'm a taxpayer like you. And when I go to the window and I pay Carol Raza, I don't say this is for the Board of Ed and this is for the town, right? $1, one tax bill. And so it doesn't matter whose budget it's in. But I just want to let you know and remind you that there is a considerable amount of money that we put through this. Obviously, a bulk of that is our school resource officers. Our Goodwin and our middle school resource officers work 37.5 hours, an increase that the police commission made a couple years ago. And our high school SRO is scheduled at 40 hours a week. You go on the next one. I'm going to ask Patrolman Dwyer, who is a state certified master firearms instructor, to go over some of the tools that Eileen wanted to play with right before the meeting, because I want to demonstrate to you the equipment that we have that we would put on and rapidly deploy. God forbid there was a tragedy in our school.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, all. I'm going to stand up, so I do a little better standing up. As the Chief has said, we are imagining unimaginable. Okay, this is a new reality. We were in high school. We never thought of anything like this. It never came up, but it's coming up all the time now. So what we have is we have gear and equipment that is going to meet or exceed the threat that we have to deal with. Now, if anyone thinks that this can't happen in Old Saybrook, sadly, it can. Days before Sandy Hook, we ran a Citizens Police Academy in Newtown. I helped out with the class. People in the class said at that time, well, this is Newtown. Things don't happen here. Just like Old Saybrook. People say the same thing here. It does, unfortunately. And now we've got equipment that is going to give us the confidence and the ability to be able to get in, to meet and exceed those threats, and to take that threat out immediately. One of the biggest things is the person who's wearing this stuff, okay? You've got to be ready to go. And I think most of the officers, every officer that we have is ready to go and ready to do this and meet and exceed those threats. So first thing we have, each one of the officers is issued a gear bag, just like this one. It's got a helmet, tactical vest, there's spare magazines inside of it. Every officer grabs this every day with their EMS bag, puts it in the cruiser. Every cruiser is equipped with an M4 rifle, sledgehammer, Halligan, bolt cutters, and a ram, okay? We also have a shield, all right? Shield is pretty heavy.
No, I'm stuck on your goggles.
Oh, thank you. The shield is very heavy, okay? So when you're going in, hold it up. You're gonna be able to draw your firearm, walk with your firearm all the way down the halls, okay? One of the things that we have to decide, because we don't have a lot of staff on, we have to decide what it is we're gonna grab when we go to a scene. If we get that call, we have to figure out what is it gonna be. Is it gonna be the sledgehammer? Is it gonna be the bolt cutters? We know we're putting on this gear. We have to decide what else we're gonna do, okay? And that's gonna be all individual and by the training that we have, okay? Sorry, I'll just pass the helmet around. Let's see how heavy it is.
Don't give me a headache.
Kind
Don't
of
give
a
me a
special way of deploying this. Kind of take with your left hand. Pull the bag off. Right up. Just pass it right on.
Is that in addition to the gold?
Yeah, so that's ceramic plates inside that.
And those are level 4, they stop greater firepower.
Okay.
This will stop all pistol rounds and some rifle rounds, okay? In addition to that, when we put the shield up, now we can come in and we can move and try to find where the threat is. Has lights on it. Hold it dark room. See everything. Carry our rifle magazines up here. There's place for our camera here. And our first aid kit is here with our tourniquets. Any questions?
So as the commission has seen, but the Board of Ed may be unaware, in our new Tahoes, we took the driver's side back seat and made a custom tactical cabinet. So all of this equipment is located in one area behind the driver's door, which has a ballistic panel in it. So if it's the school or not the school, if it's a grocery store, whatever, and a police officer has to get out, they can open their driver's door, protection inside that door, open the backseat door, more protection, don their ceramic tactical vest and their ballistic helmet and ballistic goggles, grab their AR-15 and any other technical thing they want, or the bullet-resistant shield, and go to work. And so we practice this, as you can imagine, right? Because if you need your tactical vest, that's not a time to be fumbling around. We are most likely one of the only police departments. We are most likely one of the only police departments in Connecticut that issues individual tactical gear to each and every officer. So this type of gear is normal for a SWAT team member. We also find that it's normal that there's one set of this in the trunk of a car that multiple officers will use. We issue to every individual officer just the way a fire department would issue protective gear to every single firefighter. That way, if we have an incident that requires more cops than cars, they have equal protection. And the police commission knows that we're in the process of replacing that those tactical vests. Remember, we purchased them at the end of the year.
Wait, Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
I brought this up a while ago. At Goodwin, sometimes the SRO will have that truck, as a car. And I had asked Officer Rooney at one point, and he actually said something that like totally made me think differently of it. But that car doesn't have, the safety equipment that you're speaking of. And I said, well, to Officer Rooney, I'm like, that really bothers me. And he's like, Jess, I'm not gonna have time to go out to the car and
Correct.
get all that on.
If he goes out to the car, he's not doing his job.
Exactly. So, I understood that, but still, it would be nice to know. It would just be sort of a comfort level to know that the car that the SRO had that in it.
So he
However,
always has his tactical gear because that's
That's-
issued
yes.
per officer.
At the school.
So yes, so when they leave the station, they have to take that with them. When they come back to the station, they put it in their little cubby.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's individually issued.
So we have the rifle. It's a Colt M4 rifle. It's got a single sling point on it. Right over your shoulder. Right over. It's got a crossbow stock on it. A gas-operated weapon. It's got a sight on it, which is an Aimpoint Pro sight. It's got a flashlight in the end. Okay. This weapon has not changed much since the inception. The M16. And then it's gone through some changes, but really not a lot of changes. Basically, this rifle right here, 80% of the parts that are in this rifle, the same parts we use in the M16. Okay, so it's the pretty much the same thing as an AR-15, same thing as the XM-177, any of the carbine variants, anything else. Okay, AR-15 does not stand for automatic rifle. It's an Armalite rifle. It's made by the manufacturer's Armalite. It's based on Eugene Stoner's design. Okay, so if anyone asks you about an AR-15, it's not an automatic rifle. Okay, this is not an automatic rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle. Okay, hit the selector switch. So you put it on fire, and you pull the trigger. Every time you pull the trigger, one round will come out of the barrel. Okay, so it's not an automatic rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle. Any questions?
How do you wear the vest, carry the gun, and hold that shield all at once?
It's very, very difficult. Carrying the shield, you have the rifle, and you're probably going to sling the rifle away from you. You're going to take your pistol out, and you're going to deploy the pistol, and then you're going to move with the shield.
So we practice all that during the training and also at firearms trainings, so that we're proficient in doing that. And it is a lot of gear and it is heavy, but it's definitely, these guys and gals are very proficient at it.
I'm sure the adrenaline going to, if anything were to happen, would help.
Well, the adrenaline wears out after about the first hour of the training, and then it's heavy.
Your neck hurts, shoulders hurt, everything hurts. So,
And I think that goes to the dedication level of our police officers. Nobody complains after this training. We haven't had one injury. We haven't had anyone ever come in the next day and complain that they were sore. They're dedicated to this job, and we definitely appreciate it on our end.
So,
I'm a gun
Yes.
person and I don't know much about them and I'm not sure if it's the right terminology, but like how many rounds can something like that hold?
well, it's a box magazine. So the box magazine gets inserted right down here in the magazine well. And you can have a 30-round magazine, you can have a 20-round magazine. Here in Connecticut, you can have the 10-round magazine that goes in. Okay, so it generally doesn't go above the 30-round magazine. So 30, 20, and 10.
and then we carry spares.
Well, that's what I was
Other
wondering, that's a
best.
lot of stuff to carry.
Yep. And, as the captain was talking about, outside of the event in the school, on the live firearms range, they practice transitioning from the rifle to the sidearm and back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. So not every scenario would require the 3 or 4 officers making entry together for them all to have a rifle. Some might be using their handgun and the shield. Some might be using the rifle without the shield. That's all part of the response configuration.
Thank you.
Yes,
I was gonna say, just, I'm so impressed by the professionalism of everyone in the training. And so you really need to be congratulated. So my question, just because it's nothing I'm familiar with, that vest, what's the cost of one vest?
about $1,000, $1,100, $1,200. That's the outside ceramic vest. So that's in addition to the soft body armor that the police officer wears every day.
So the one that's really heavy that I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
That goes on top. He's already wearing a vest in that uniform. And I'll put that one on
This
to provide added protection.
So that the underneath plus this one,
is a vest.
yeah,
It's
so that cost of that is like 1,000. And then one of these.
Yes.
And did you?
And those are about 6,000, the shields.
Oh,
29, that's right, deal, yes. 29, yes. Normally 6,000. $2,900.
And is there a policy or maybe that's going to be discussed that whenever you go in, when do you absolutely have to turn on that camera?
So the law says that our cameras have to be on during any type of law enforcement interaction. So if you and I were chatting in the parking lot, I'm on duty, I don't have my camera on. You get involved in a car accident, my camera has to be on talking to you. Obviously, if we're about to use deadly force or using deadly force, we want the camera on. But as I'm sure you can say, and I'm sure someone listening will write and be upset about this, the priority is not turning on the camera when we need to save kids' lives. So if the police officer has to leave out one step, leave out the step. We have cameras in the school. We'll capture what we need. I want them in the building, saving kids' lives and ending the threat. Very, very simple.
Thanks so much.
Camera just goes on just like that. Sign off. That's it.
And that camera can quickly transfer from the uniform to the outer carrier, so it's quick. However, we'd like to have it on camera, but we don't, it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We do have cameras in every school.
So far, you can see why this is much more than just the SROs, right? This is a very comprehensive program. So far, we talked about safety rules, right, that are established jointly between the Office of the Superintendent and my office, emergency planning, emergency exercises, emergency briefings, professional development that gives us both an emotional buy-in and a psychomotor buy-in, the proper equipment to go with the professional development, all to make sure that we're ready to respond. So in Old Saybrook, God forbid there was an issue at the school. We'll talk about the SRO's job in a moment when it comes to their time to speak. The first arriving officers are the ones in the school. If that's me, I'm in the school. Okay, so who's ever first on scene is going in to save lives. That is the deal. And all of our personnel know that. In addition to this part of our school-based policing program, we obviously have an investigatory role if there's a threat against a school, a student, or a staff member to ensure that when schools open in the morning for their academic day, that they are as safe as they possibly can be. So there are times when, after the academic day has ended, we hear from a student or a parent or a faculty member that they overheard something, or there's a concern on social media or whatever, that is giving us pause on the safety and security of that school campus. And so while we'll be in constant communication with the superintendent of schools and any Board of Education employee that we need to be, I wanted Sergeant Mykowski to kind of give the Police Commission and the Board of Education an overview of how we handle that. Sarge?
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Sergeant Mykowski, I work the evening shift. So a lot of times these school safety concerns come in after hours, after the school day is completed. A lot of times, a student will go sit down with their parents and they'll talk about something that they heard at school, something they saw, and sometimes they don't feel maybe comfortable enough to say it during the day to a teacher. And usually it's spoken about with the parent, and the parents, they get together and they say, okay, this is something serious and we need to alert the police. So once they notify us, dispatch will usually call me and notify me of the complaint, the school safety concern. And usually with that initial information, that's when I tell the chief of police and let them know what's actually going on. And that kind of gets the ball rolling, and we start talking about where the investigation is going, who's involved, what resources are needed, if a detective needs to come in to help with interviews. Usually the sergeant is the primary investigator. But if statements need to be gathered, evidence collection, there's a lot of different moving parts that go with these investigations. And we need to get these investigations done in a timely manner, because we want to make sure that school starts and goes on time the next day, and that we address that school safety concern as soon as possible. So after I speak with the chief and we have a good game plan together, usually I'll contact one of the school administrators, assistant principal, and advise them of the same complaint. A lot of times, especially after school, they're huge in helping out with figuring out what address we need to go to, phone numbers, however we're going to contact those students and their parents. So then the full investigation really gets kicked off, and we're going to obviously speak with a student at their house with their parents. We're going to follow up with the complainant and make sure that the information that they've given is correct, and try to dive deeper into what they either saw or heard. And then a lot of times in these investigations, it's not just you're following with the complainant and then going to speak with the subject. A lot of times, especially in the schools, someone else maybe heard the complaint. So you're going and you're interviewing 5, 6, sometimes even 7 different students with their parents. And then sometimes it's a faculty member who makes the complaint. So there's a lot of moving parts with these investigations. A lot of people need to be interviewed. And then again, if there's evidence that needs to be collected, if we need to bring in the next shift, they'll come in to assist in that investigation as well. So then once we conclude the investigation, I'm usually following back up with chief, letting him know my findings. We go over if there's anything else that needs to be done that maybe we've haven't thought about. And then also we see if the complaint is unfounded, or if there's actually a very serious immediate concern, like a threat was made, and there's actually probable cause to actually go out and have to make an arrest if that is necessary. So then again, we follow back up with the school administrator, and we let them know if there is a serious concern or if it is unfounded. And so they can go about the rest of their day and make sure that school gets started on time. And then obviously an SRO is advised. So usually we'll advise them of the issue of the complaint, so that they're made well aware for the next day if something gets brought up by another student and they're concerned as to what actually went on. So with here, it's kind of different for the day shift. So obviously, like Chief said, if there's an immediate school safety concern, I would be sending the entire shift to the school. We're gonna, like I said, call in the next shift to help if it's with security, with just regular patrol functions, meeting the needs of the town, or again, evidence collection, statements, things of that nature. Again, the chief's going to be notified, and we're going to be doing everything we can to secure the students and the staff. Again, if it was a lockdown, obviously, making sure that they're safe and secure. and any other immediate action or a safety concern. So we try to obviously speak with the chief and figure out if there's anything else that needs to be done. And then for the future, obviously, so if we do feel that there is some sort of threat that could come in the future, then we have to figure out if we're going to add another police officer at the school, just to make sure that we have that high visibility presence in the future. So basically, there are a lot of, like I said before, a lot of moving parts that have to do with these investigations. We need to get it done in a timely manner, and it's extremely serious, and we do it with the utmost urgency to make sure that the kids can get to school, and that everybody's safe at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, so like the sergeant, the world stops. This becomes our priority. If we need more folks, they come in. We'll transfer our first responder, our EMS first responder responsibility to the fire department so we can solely focus on the school investigation. Sometimes Sarge on the evening shift will get this at 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yes.
For a middle school case, he's got a 2.5 hour window where he can talk to kids, right, and parents. And so we need to be everywhere if there's 7 kids involved, all at the same time, because we have to figure out their story. Now, what the Board of Ed needs to know is upon my initial notification, how scarce the information is, my next phone call is to the superintendent. And she and I stay in very regular contact about what is going on. Our goal during these investigations is not to arrest a kid. Our goal during these investigations is to make sure the campus can open safely the next day. So at the conclusion of these investigations, I call Jan. This is not a snow day conversation. I call Jan and I tell her one of 3 things. It's safe to open. It's not safe to open. It's safe to open with modifications, right? And we've had close to all 3 in Old Saybrook. So we've had bag checks at the high school. We've done different entry at some of the other schools when we had a concern, right? But it's one of those 3 things. Open safely, you can open safely. You can't open, I can't guarantee safety of your campus. We have to open with modifications. She has to take that information and then make the decision, the best decision on behalf of her school district, which, as I'm sure she'll talk about on her slide, is a pretty monumental and heavy-weighted decision, right? If your police chief is telling you, I can't guarantee the kids are safe at school tomorrow, just kind of in a box there. But that's why communication is so very important. Additionally, after something happens that in Old Saybrook spreads very quickly, right? You go to one kid's house, that parent's on social media telling everybody else before we can get there. There's always a joint communication that goes from Jan and I to the faculty and the students' families that are affected in the incident, because we both believe that one voice, one message is very important during any type of these safety and security type of incidents. There are varying laws that tell Jan as a superintendent of school what she can and can't say and dictate on what I can and can't say. The law sometimes allows me to say a little bit more than what the superintendent's allowed to say, which is why we normally do the joint letter or a joint meeting or a joint appearance, so that I can say some of the things that she really wants to say, but the law prevents her from saying it. And so it makes those 2 positions a good team when trying to explain to parents and students and faculty about the concern they have. So hit lists in the school, student lists, sometimes these things are just rumor, but until Sergeant Mykowski and his crew flush that out, we are as serious can be to make sure that we are keeping the students and staff safe for the opening of the next academic day. Thanks, Sergeant.
Absolutely.
One of the things I just want to go back to our response real quick, because I know the police commission has heard this in 2 different workshops, but for the Board of Ed, our dispatchers are also trained in a wide array of protocol, including active shooter. They're also trained in a protocol called caller in danger. So if someone calls 911 from inside the school when there's an emergency and they can't talk, the dispatcher has information in front of them on those computer screens using that caller interrogation protocol we talked to you about, that will tell the caller, tap on the phone, push a button, change your breathing pattern, all to answer safety related questions. And when they're able to, be able to guide that person to safety. So our dispatchers train on that annually as well. I just wanted to point that out. Go to the next slide. Oh, yes, sorry. Ashley.
Question, so I think it's a kind of a shaky question. Maybe we'll get to when Jan gives her information. How do you decide, I just remember because being involved in policy for Board of Education, how do you decide that it's an educational implication or separate and apart from the schools?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's probably a very detailed answer that I'm sure Jan will cut me off at any second here. But things that are related to school discipline, that are primarily school discipline, the police department, the school resource officer, we want nothing to do with that. That is so not our job, right? So an SRO is an adult in a school. If Officer Oresco is walking down the hallway and a sixth grader whips around the corner and is dashing, he should say, whoa, slow down. But he's not issuing a detention. He's talking to that student as an adult in the school. But he wouldn't bring that student to the office or write the student up. Totally not his deal. There are times that when crimes are committed, the school will either report those crimes to the police department, will investigate, and then give the findings back to the administration, the superintendent, and sometimes the Board of Education gets to read our reports, right, if you have to have an expulsion hearing. But generally, we try to keep things school discipline related unless they just cannot be. And sometimes things happen outside the 6.5 hour academic day that the school really needs to know about because it will infect their academic day as people begin to talk about what happened the night before. So primarily school discipline unless it just can't be. And then if it's on us, it eventually goes back to the school through an advisement under a state law that mandates that she knows about all felony and Class A misdemeanor arrests.
Just to follow up, so if kids are at a party that's not on school grounds, then you hear, then parents or whatever, you may overhear something. So I know that, I remember when Sal Pasquarello was here, he used the word, if it's a nexus, if it's related. And so I was curious to know when that becomes school, that's another.
Yeah, anything that affects the academic day, the teachers can deal with, right? So if there's that party, maybe there's no arrest. There's just some stuff going on that shouldn't be going on, but it's preventing the academic day from doing what it's doing. It's stopping that, educational process, and the teacher has to stop or an administrator has to stop and do something about it. Then it can become their concerns. Maybe it's a social emotional concern that is handled just with support team members, and it's a non-disciplinary thing. Maybe people need help. And the school district is great with providing that. But a great segue, Eileen, into our next slide, which is our very dedicated school resource officer program. I should start off by reminding everybody in the room that our SRO program is a non-enforcement program, meaning that the school resource officer assigned to each building does not have the primary responsibility of making an arrest. Their goal is not to introduce students into the criminal justice system. They are there primarily, amongst their safety role, to be part of the student support team. And so if we were called into a school, and if an arrest had to be made, the SRO would not be making that arrest. The SRO would be there to explain to staff and students why this had to happen, what's going to happen next, so that SRO does not lose their bond that they've made with the school staff. Now, obviously, if something crazy happens right in front of them and they have to take immediate action, they'll do that. But in general, we're a non-enforcement program. So back when I was an SRO, we weren't hiding in the bathroom stalls to see if someone came in to smoke a cigarette, then jump out and give a ticket. Totally never, ever, ever the way Old Saybrook's program was designed. We are fortunate enough in Old Saybrook to have 3 full-time during the academic year school resource officers in every one of our buildings. These individuals are very special human beings. And I say that because I know that through the interview process. When I interview someone to become a new school resource officer, and I explain this to every single staff member in our public school district this year, one of the last questions I ask them are you willing to die for the students in your school? Because during an active shooter scenario, their job is not to go and get on a vest. It is not to go get a bigger gun. It is to go direct to threat. In fact, their job, well, we'd like them to mitigate that aggressive subject, but more likely than not, they are going to create time in distance between the violence and the kids, giving them time to get to safety. And so when we do our full-scale exercise at the school, we actually drill finding our dedicated SROs deceased upon arrival or severely injured that they can no longer carry out their duties. This should give you chills when you think about this. So they have taken a job, all 3 retired police officers. This is not a retirement job at all. It is one of the jobs that's under the most highest microscope, because if you're in a cop car, you can sneak behind a building. You're in the middle school, you're in the high school, you're in the Goodwin school, there ain't nowhere to hide. Someone is finding you. You're constantly engaged, you're constantly working, and you're constantly on edge because your primary job is to save lives, if you have to, any second of the day. So I've asked our 3 dedicated SROs to be here today. Each one of them is gonna take a little bit apart, different part about the SRO program, and then each one will talk about what they do every day in their respective campuses. So we're gonna start with SRO Patrolman Gabinelli. Sure.
Thank you for having me. I get asked, actually, I'm gonna just jump back. Chief stated that we're not an enforcement, we're not there to enforce and make arrests. That's not our first primary function. That's not just Old Saybrook, that's NASRO, so the National Association of School Resource Officers. We actually went to 40 hours of training for this. And that's anybody who's gone through the training, that is the philosophy of NASRO. I often get asked, what do you do every day? And every day is different, and that's the best thing about it. Sometimes I jump in and I help make meatballs when someone walks out of the kitchen. But really, I'm there to foster open lines of communication, create a safe space where people feel comfortable, staff and students, coming and talking and without judgment and fear of persecution. It's an open door policy. Granted, I do lure them in with candy sometimes in the office, but it does get them to come in and to talk. Of course, I educate on school safety. Every time there's an event like Uvalde or Parkland, kids get what I call like a hangover, and they start talking, and it fosters conversations and it creates anxiety. Certain teachers will call and I'll sit with certain students and I will explain to them how we train, what we have, everything that we went over, and assure them that, and I've been a police officer for 27 years. I do not think anybody trains like we do. I don't know that anybody has the equipment that we do. I know that as a state trooper for 21 years, we didn't. So I'm very proud of what we do and how we do it. And anybody who's been with me while I'm training, I'm pretty intense when it happens, because I believe you play like you practice. And I'm taking the back out. I'm not going down. So we spend a lot of time just talking about, how we train, how quick our level of response will be, put kids at ease, put students, staff at ease. I know some of our new staff members this year were really taken by chief safety brief, and it really got them in the right mindset. And they said it was pretty intense, but I think at this point with what's going on in the world, it has to be. I try to collaborate and support all stakeholder groups, right? So be it the students, the parents, the central office, front office, just one team, one united front, obviously the administration as well. And make sure all the kids know and the staff knows that there's no stupid questions, especially when it comes to safety. Like, I am an open book. They can ask me anything. I'll be completely honest with them. I talk about my previous experience prior to coming to Old Saybrook, my experience while I'm here, and I listen, right? Because everybody wants to be heard. And I think that's the biggest part. It's communication. In any relationship, it's communication. So just hearing the student, hearing what they have to say, listening to them, but also having boundaries. I think that's very, very important as well. They know that they can joke with me, but they also know when it's gone a little bit too far. I bake with them in culinary. I play basketball with them. it's a fantastic job. I couldn't be any happier here. And it's just, you know, going up to Camp Hazen and getting in with the freshmen, I was able to spend the entire day up there this year, and that really, it really helps. It's an incredibly long day, but it's sort of just, it really gets, we get like a nice foundation. And we get to see each other outside of the school day and see each other, you know, having fun as opposed to just, you know, being in school mode. I speak and I'm a guest speaker in several classes. I do a health class with freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors, and we basically concentrate on distracted driving, substance abuse, and healthy relationships. And we found that over the years that we let the kids write out their questions and put them in half because they're not as comfortable. So it's anonymous, not as comfortable asking when a spotlight gets put on them. And that's really worked out really well. And then if it, you know, just fosters open communication amongst classmates, that's even better. Moreover, I stay approachable. I consistently reinforce that I'm a resource, that I'm not just here for safety, that I have a lot of life experience that I bring in with me, and that I'm always available.
Thank you. Then we have our first full-time paid middle school soccer coach and school resource officer, Scott Oreska.
Wait, Chief.
Yes,
Question for, is that okay?
sure. Want to do all the SROs together at the end? Do you mind?
Well, I just have a question about the Camp Hazen thing. I'm not familiar with that.
So the freshmen go on a retreat,
Oh.
kind of a bonding retreat to get to know each other and get to know
That's
the
cool.
staff. It's
We don't have
organized
that.
with the school district
And
and
youth
youth and
and
family
family.
services, yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's
a great program.
awesome. That's very
It's a
cool.
great day.
I have a question too. I'm awful glad you said there are no stupid questions, because here we go. Do you dress that way every day with your vest and everything?
Yes, I am. Ooh, sometimes it's a little bit different. Sometimes I'll wear this shirt, but always in a vest, always in the regular uniform. And I think the philosophy behind it is that every police officer should look the same so the kids are comfortable. And there's not one kid in the high school that's been through Old Saybrook school system that hasn't had an SRO in their school from the time they started school.
So if you're in pre-K, you got a cop in your school. So seeing a police officer in the school is commonplace.
Yeah.
If there wasn't one there, if we didn't have a car parked in front of the school for a day, our phones would be ringing, finding out where the cop was.
Well, even back in the day, we had SROs in my school, but
But we had part-time when I was there. They weren't.
but they didn't have to be quite so equipped. But then it was a different time, and I am eventually gonna ask about bomb scares, because my teaching, we had bomb scares all the time.
That's what
We did, they
Yeah,
used to
don't
send
even
them
say it.
home, and then they said, no, we can't send them home all the time, we've got to establish a protocol, and, you know, you were talking about finding, or someone was talking about finding the ball in the room. I taught chemistry for a lot of years, and if we got the code, I had to open every drawer, every lab bench, and then you had to send a note down, this room all clear, so, you know, I'm wondering what you do with that. but-
Yes, we're probably not going to talk about that at a public meeting, but safe to say, we have procedures in place on how we would investigate a bomb threat at a school. Eileen?
I suppose I really appreciate your approach and just the approachability. You know, for kids just to be able to know that there's somebody that they can talk to. So is there a designated place, like say if you're in the high school, like you have an office, so they know where your office is, as opposed to just be walking around, or, you know?
I walk around a lot. And that's actually probably more effective than my being in my office. That being said, the kids know where to find me. I did switch it up. So I have a new office this year and they're kind of getting, used to where I am. But yeah, no, and it's great because they know that they can come in and we can talk. It's a nice comfortable chair for them. I'll just make sure that whatever teacher, if they're supposed to be somewhere, they know that I have them, set them with a pass. But I've really, I've made a lot of inroads, and it's incredibly rewarding for me to feel that way, and make those kind of connections. That's wonderful.
Right, our middle school resource officer and soccer coach.
My name's Scott Oresco. I am at the middle school. This is my second year, and I absolutely love it. You stole my speech, so thank you. Sorry. So I'll just talk about, I'll get into the DARE programs. I'm the new DARE instructor. This summer, I attended a 2-week crash course. It was 80 hours. Basically, just instruction, classroom management, working with students, working with special needs students. And they get you prepared for the lessons. It's basically public speaking, which I'm horrible at, as you could tell. Some of the lessons that I'm going to be teaching is peer pressure, bullying, dealing with stressful situations, risks and consequences, some positive and negative. I also was asked by a few 7th and 8th grade teachers if I would go into the classrooms and teach as well, a couple classes. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll be teaching 5th grade. We have approximately 65 5th graders, and we'll probably start up right after the holidays. It's a 10 to 12 week program, and I'm really looking forward to get going. We will have a little graduation afterwards, which is really cool. Besides the DARE program, as far as school security, I work closely with the administration, Dr. Christopher Bachman and Matt Walton, and I think we have a good working relationship. And I also work with the counselors at times. As the chief mentioned, I am also the boys soccer coach, and I didn't realize how important soccer was down here until I took this position. I think we had almost 40 kids try out, and we ended up keeping 27 kids. Basically, we just kept all the 7th and 8th graders, and we figured 6th graders will have their time in the next couple of years. If I could just add a couple other things. What you guys do down here, I retired from Middletown after 29 years, is special. I can't tell you how many times parents come up to me, whether it's after school, thanking me for being there. And that, says a lot about you guys in this room. Also, what these guys do, the training and equipment, it's unparalleled. It's a pain in the neck. I'm gonna use another word to go through it, but it's needed, and it's weeks prior to the 2-day presentation we have in August, and it continues. So it's thank you for that, and it's needed. So thank you.
Thanks, Doc. And our Goodwin school resource officer, a man who needs no introduction at Goodwin School, except for the kids that are very scarred from some bad kickball playing, Lawrence Root.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just second with Scott and Denise there.
Karen.
Although
now I'm going to order a name tag that says Karen. I'll take care of that.
The problem is when I get to the police department, Karen's already gone. When I get back after my school day, Karen's gone. But anyway, so this is my 3rd police department. And I'm telling you, this is and I tell people this all the time, this is a well-trained police department, trust me. Again, my 3rd police department. I've never had training like I've had here, and it's obviously very, very important. But I'll try to make this quick. So basically, my day is I get to Goodwin by 8 o'clock. First thing I do, I shut down the, traffic is very, very important. There's what, 300-400 kids there, there's staff members, there's parents. I shut the lane down in front of the school. I don't want anybody in the front of that school. You got staff members crossing. I set up the cones for student drop off, which is important. We get the cars all the way on the other side of the parking lot away from everybody. And then what I do is immediately I check the outside of the building. I check the doors, I check the grounds, I check the whole building, see if everything's fine. Then I go into the front office, I check with Principal Sutton, the secretaries, anything going on. I check in with them. I go back outside, and the day starts. We get a lot of kids obviously getting dropped off by their parents. I'm there front and center. I'm there, the whole time when the kids are getting dropped off, make sure everything's, going well. Because sometimes you have parents, they want to like do things that aren't safe, and, it's really important here for me, for traffic safety. So we get all the kids into school, boom, boom, boom. I take all the cones down, and then what I do is throughout the day, I'll walk around the school. I'll see kids out there, the playground, I interact with them outside, the staff members, et cetera. I do that on a regular basis all day. And during I walk in the school, up and down all the hallways, I interact with the kids, the students, whatever. I'm very visible. And at the end of the day, I'm back out there. And just so you know, well, a good part of the day, I am outside at the front of the building where Acton Library meets the school. I am there. Anybody's coming and going, I'm talking to them. And if anybody comes there with ill-advised or bad intentions, I'm there. So I spend a lot of time at the front of that building. And if I see somebody I don't recognize, we'll bring you to Goodwin. Constant interaction. At the end of the day, again, I work with Heston. We get the buses in, we get them out, and that's my day. Does anybody have any questions at all? Or I know it went kind of quick, but the main thing is interacting with the kids, the staff, front and center, and I'm in the front of that building. So if anybody shows up, like Karen said, I don't. Not,
And that's the mindset that we talk about in the training. So every one of our police officers has to have that mindset with these type of situations.
And I can say it's an honor to work in this police department, and it's an honor to work in this town. It's right here. Thank you.
I just retired from 35 years of teaching, and I am so impressed, first of all, the level of training involved and commitment, but also that each school has a designated SRO. So thank you for your efforts.
Yeah.
And it's money well spent, and I'm so pleased.
For anyone who doesn't know it, this is Leanne Flynn, our newest Board of Education member.
Welcome. If I can say, thank you for what you do or what you did. And I think there are so many parallels between police work and teaching, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's.
I mean, I've been through the
it's
training
so
on our
weird.
end, and I'm just saying to myself, whoa.
There's not a teacher I meet now that I don't thank for what they do. And I think both of our jobs at time are thankless jobs, and until you're in it and you see the day to day,
Right.
nobody knows. So
Right.
thank you. It's my first year here, I said to Chief, I go, it's probably one of the easiest jobs I've ever had. I've never been so exhausted, but you're always on, right? And as a teacher, you're performing, and
When he mentioned Sandy Hook, I can still exactly remember what I was doing in the classroom at that, and it's amazing what you all do. So thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, if I just one more point, like Scott said, I think Karen said too, is like, we appreciate the support we get from this town, because it means a lot.
In this day and age especially,
Oh.
it's
Unprecedented
it's
times.
really nice to be thanked for what we do, and I think we all come from a background that was not the case, so.
Just before I get to your questions real quick, a couple other things I want you to know about the SRO program. So big part of the student support teams, and they're not on the student support teams as police officers. They're there as resources. So these 3 cops in the school are not typing police reports about everything they see, hear, or do during the day. If an SRO has to do a report, it's very, very few and far in between, and it must be something pretty darn serious. Their job is to be kind of a non-traditional police officer. What can we do to help? Do you want me to call youth and family and get that oil tank filled at that house? They can come to a meeting and say, hear that this kid's struggling. We can say, well, they're having some issues here, and here's how we can help that family as a community. So I think that's really important. They also bridge a very unique gap in between the criminal justice system and the school system. So a domestic disturbance that happens at 9 p.m. at night, where someone's arrested and has to go to court the next morning, paperwork for restraining orders, that could be a custodial interference type issue, will not hit the school until the academic day is almost over. But because we have police officers in the building that will have that knowledge through our reporting system and through the mandating passing of information from sergeant to school resource officer, we're able to set up the school to be successful to protect that child, right? So someone gets arrested at night, they think they're gonna show up at the school in the morning and grab the kid and take him across state lines. Ain't happening, because we're going to know there. We're gonna know that information, we're gonna be there. DCF investigations, right? Sometimes they get very complex. We're able to work with the school and deal with that. Social emotional needs, sadly, children that want to harm themselves. Sometimes we're that first call after hours, but that information can get back to the school counselors so they can help the kids during the academic day and help the family through the school district. So very, very important that we do that. The police commission knows, but probably important for the Board of Education to know, our dispatchers, when there's no kids in the building, check every single camera in the school. And if there's an issue with a camera, an email notification is sent to a school district employee who resets that camera before the beginning of the next academic day. So there's a check and balance based on an MOU between the school district and the police department that we're doing that work on a 24/7 basis, which I think is extremely important. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I just want to thank all you guys. My kids went through the whole entire school system from kindergarten through graduation, and it's a huge comfort when all these awful events happening, knowing that we have an SRO program in the schools, and it's a staple in their lives. Just seeing a police car in front of the building and just having you guys in the schools, it's wonderful. You guys, put your lives, for the kids. So just want to thank all of you.
Thank you. Eileen?
Yeah, so question is that each one of you that's in a school has a sense of what's developmentally appropriate for different age levels. So if all of a sudden you can't go, so well, maybe you can. Somebody in high school, can go to Goodwin because that's a whole different clientele of children. And so I'm curious to know if you, well, maybe two things. One, because your police officers or SROs, let's say that, SROs, you might not necessarily, which makes sense, have the training of what high school kids go through or what middle school kids go through or what elementary school child goes through. So number one, how do you learn a little bit about that? But then how do you go in, like say, there's a 5-year-old, right? And they see, and the other thing is social media doesn't help you at all. Because on social media, all they see is like, people getting shot at and all sorts of stuff. So there's an image there. So the image that you're portraying tonight is absolutely the way to go. No, I don't have any questions in my mind. So then when you go into the school, how do you then say, let's start with Goodwin School. If you go in, people probably know, oh, that's a badge. Oh, and so you have to sort of educate them. And I was wondering, how that happens.
So great questions. So the right person for the right job starts with the hiring process, right? And so anybody on the Board of Education knows, certainly the superintendent, the principals, if they're interviewing a teacher, they can look at a teacher and go, elementary school, no, high school, right? So Karen in a kickball game with a second grader, I'm concerned for the second grader, right? So I can tell you that each one of these personalities, each one of these people is in their right age group, just like your dedicated teachers in your school district. Sometimes a Goodwin school teacher would not be professionally successful at the high school, right? And so, hold that in, Jen. So I think that each one is in their spot appropriately. The Board of Ed should know and does know, I believe, I know the Police Commission knows that after you hire someone who's going to be an SRO, final step is really superintendent, right? So if the superintendent says, not a right fit for the school district, we're not going to force a cop to be an SRO. The only difference is I want everyone in the room to know, and everyone listening at home, that if one of these three is sick or injured, God forbid, or has jury duty that we can't figure out some way to get them out of, or in a training, they're backfilled with another police officer. So there is not an academic day where a school is open that it does not have a cop in the building. So we pay overtime, we'll pull from the shift. We never, ever, ever have an unsafe campus, a campus without an SRO. And I think that's really important. Part B to the question is, how do you talk to the kids? Well, we'll start with Karen and go right down the road, because it is different. It's developmentally different for each age group. And Karen talks to a high school student who might be a little bit more challenging, right, than someone who's wide-eyed at the Goodwin School officer. So Karen, if you want to start.
Part of the NASRO training does talk about the developmental stages, and, you know, and one of the big things was their brains are not fully developed until in their mid-20s.
45.
So next year for you, Jen, that's very nice on how you put that. Julie, couple more years.
So that is part of the training, and you know, every student's different, you know, so I think there was an adjustment period for me when I first started, you know, coming from the state police, and I traveled here from Berlin because the demographic was amazing, the kids are great, and I moved here because I fell in love with the town. So it kind of depends on what the situation is. If we're kind of joking around, if things get a little bit too serious, you know, I throw the old, my mother was Judy, oh, whoa, you know, easy. And, you know, we obviously have special needs kids, and so there's a whole different, it's just being a police officer, and being a police officer for this long is knowing how to talk to people. That's what makes you successful. It's communication, and it's you know, sometimes Mr. Anastasia can tell you, I just sit on the floor with kids sometimes, you know, or kneel and look up at them and just, you know, I don't know, you just know, because we've done this for so long. And obviously I wouldn't go, I have covered for Officer Rooney, and I did a lot of duck, duck, goose that day. But I'll tell you, I couldn't do that every day. At that level. So it's just knowing your audience, really, you know, and have I failed? Yeah, I failed a couple times. I thought, you know, I might have known better, and I've learned so much. I learned more from these kids than I could ever teach them. So, yeah, so it's just kind of knowing your surroundings, but this is what we do, right? So we walk in as detectives and officers into all types of situations, with all types of people, and we gauge.
It's also nice that this district is very systemic, so that if a student starts at Goodwin and they see somebody and then they move to the middle school, and then the other person's like, you know, you might say, I'm Mr. So-and-so, and I do what he does in the, you know, in the Goodwin school, so that there's a continuity, and so it becomes common practice where you might have a student that transfers in,
Right.
and they're like, say, from Hartford or New Haven, and they're like, whoa, so that's a whole education, you know, for them.
And those are the kids I embrace the most,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Goodwin goes, I mean, it's constant interaction with the kids, with the parents, with the staff, whatever. And the kids are great. They're very, very interesting. They're really, really smart. They're a whole lot smarter than we ever were. And you just, you know, you talk to them like a human being. And, you know, I talk about my family, you know, they talk about their family, blah, blah, blah. You get a rapport with them. And, you know, with staff members, I'm constantly asking, you know, staff members, I don't know, I just ask questions. But it's a constant just talking to people. Like I said, whether it's the students, the staff, the parents, and you learn a hell of a lot. And if you talk to them, and you talk to them like a human being. And, you know, there does come a time, you know, I'm a police officer, and, you know, there are times you have to draw the line. And you gotta be firm about that. You know, I'm a police officer first, and, you know, an SRO, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but it's just talking to the kids.
The only reason I ask the question is because right now I have a 2.5-year-old grandson. So, you know, like they play and they put on badges and they do all sorts of stuff. So it'd be interesting, do you go into like the younger grades and be like, so I wear a badge, and this would tell me
Yeah,
that.
teacher,
So that's why the teacher works with you,
yeah,
that kind of
the
thing.
teacher calls me and et cetera. And one thing is too, is you gotta realize too, is that, you know, every interaction is important. And you can't lose sight of that. That, you know, that kid you're talking to there, you know, it's important that you,
Makes an impression.
yeah, you make an impression.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when you think about it, if you've never interacted with anyone from the Old Saybrook Department of Police Services, you call there, the dispatcher who answers the phone gives you your impression of the police department. For Lawrence at Goodwin School, that can be the first time a youngster has ever interacted with a police officer, and he is providing that child's impression of what all police officers are. So it's very normal. Mark will tell you, and he'll tell you that, Chris will tell you that sometimes we go on calls, we have to talk to kids. We're like, what school do you go to? I go to Goodwin School. How's Officer Rooney? And they perk right up, and then they're able to communicate with them. So just having that connection, that name association with a police officer sometimes helps us when we're in a really tough domestic violence situation where an officer has to talk to a young child. Scott, middle school, how do you get into that adolescent mind?
No, I think it's just about building relationships.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I'm not gonna talk to a fifth grader as in my soccer team when we're gonna beat.
That's really weighing on you. Huh, this whole life.
Put it out, it does bother me.
Yeah, good. And it should, Scott.
But we can play them again, so. That's what it's about. It's about building relationships, and it's, in the beginning for me last year, it took time, especially with the fifth graders. But I think Julie saw during recess, I'm out there,
He's on the field playing
football.
Soccer,
whatever,
kickball.
and it's great, and that's what it's about. That's what it's really about.
Yeah, and that's where the bonding happens, and that's where you get a kid that comes up to you and says, hey, can I talk to you for a second? So-and-so's thinking about hurting themselves, right? In our DARE classes, we have a DARE box where kids can put questions in, and oftentimes it's people who are reaching out for help. I have a problem with this, can you help me? I don't want to go down to the guidance counselor by myself, can you come with me? So there are a lot of things that happen. You know, we can laugh and joke about playing or baking or serving the meatballs. It's all about the connections to make them not these untouchable, unrelatable police officers, but someone who I know is approachable and I know that they care about me.
And Chief, can I just add?
Yeah, of
something?
course.
You mentioned about the badge, taking the badge. One of the first things we do with the fifth graders in DARE is we go over uniform. And this is the uniform I wear. Is there any questions? That's it. And that'll be the end of it. And yeah, until the lessons are over.
Last year, we had a great experience with DARE. We had our Spanish-speaking officers come in who are not DARE instructors and sit next to our ESL students and partner with them as they did their Spanish workbook. And by the end, they were writing their DARE essay in English. And so that's a nice transformation that the police officer got to share with them. Actually, I'm wondering if we could minimize and put up the screen because it's time for Principal's Corner, where we will go right down the line and we would ask our dedicated campus leaders to comment on SRO programs, school-based policing, safety and security, anything you want to share. Let's put that interim high school principal up first, Mr. Anastasio.
Thanks, Chief. Welcome from thunderstorm Brooklyn, Connecticut. If I happen to go out, it's just, the wild weather up here. Hopefully it's passing. I think a lot of it's been said, and I came from another district. This is my 9th year here, and the value on safety is second to none. I've never seen anything like it. I was impressed the first time I came, and it hasn't waned at all. If anything, it's gotten stronger, I think. And it's really valuable for me as an administrator to have an SRO in the building for all of the many facets that she provides. Not just the policing, not just the safety, but the relationships that she builds, the ability to, yes, I have seen her sit down next to a kid and talk that kid through a tough time. She's eyes and ears. She is great for bouncing ideas off of when we're dealing with a tough situation. She knows the line, she respects the line. We work well together, and she cares about kids and she cares about the staff. And it's a worthwhile program. As it said, we're never left without an SRO in the building, and I appreciate that. The officers are always there when we need them, when we have questions, as well as the chief. So I can't say enough good things about the program. And I think Karen has done a wonderful job in building relationships with kids, and that's transcended even the classroom when she has gone into criminal law, when she's jumped into a health class. She's not above stuffing envelopes when we're running crazy in the front office. So she's come to be known as a team player and someone we rely on, and really value the relationship we have with the police department. Like I said, I think it's very unique. I don't know of any other towns that really share this in terms of the training that you do, the emphasis you place on safety. And that's one thing that is a comfort to me as a school administrator, knowing that we're safe and feeling that we're safe, and knowing, the partnership you have with Jan Peruccio too, in terms of keeping us safe. I think it's marvelous.
Thank you very much. The next person we'll introduce is Dr. Bachman. Let me tell you how I met her. She was hired as the middle school principal, and days later I was summoned to her office, and in her hand was the school district safety plan with all these different color tabs, and she had question upon question upon question, and I went, wow, you read that. I could not be more excited. So we have a great relationship down at the middle school. So Dr. Bachman?
Hi, everybody. I would say probably very similar to Joe Anastasio here, that we have a very good relationship with the police department, and being able to reach out anytime we have a question or a concern, knowing that it's a comfortable thing to be able to do, to be able to encourage our staff to do the same if there is some kind of a concern. I think having that relationship helps make that an easier phone call if we do have a particular situation. As far as our school resource officer goes, we are very happy to have Officer Oresco in our building. He's one of the first faces the kids see in the morning. He's always out there greeting them, chatting with them, talking with them. He spends a lot of time in our cafeteria, again, talking with kids, going out to recess, playing with them. I think that's probably how the whole soccer thing started. But just the fact that he's, our middle school soccer coach, it's a different relationship that he has with the kids doing that. And I think it provides them, again, with an opportunity to have one more person in our building that they can feel connected to, that they can talk to. And I think that that's so important for all of our students to be able to have that connection. And lastly, I think it does help everybody feel more safe. So, in addition to the fact that they do actually provide additional safety for our building, I think it helps everybody feel safe so that they can focus on what's happening in the building, focus on their learning, and really not have to worry about that aspect of it, because we know that Scott has things under control. And I do appreciate, Chief, when you came in and spoke with all of our staff, one of the things that was made very clear is that safety is everybody's responsibility. It is our entire building's responsibility, every teacher, every para, every staff member. And we take that very, very seriously. And we appreciate the fact that we can talk to our school resource officer or the chief or any of our officers if we have questions about what's the best way to maintain that safety. So thank you, everybody, for that.
Thank you, Doc. And our elementary school principal, Mr. Sutman. Mr. Sutman was the associate principal at the middle school when I was the middle school resource officer. And then after becoming chief, he was interim superintendent for a while when we had almost every possible natural disaster and tainted milk scenario at the Goodwin School that was possible. And before that, I always used to use the phrase, and still do, that school safety is the easiest thing to put on the back burner, but the hardest thing to explain why we did. And during his brief stint in the superintendent's office, he learned that to be very true. So Mr. Sutman.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just echo the sentiments of Joe and Krista. We have an outstanding relationship with the police department. There's never a time that we need them that they're not willing to be there for us. And no, they walk the talk of putting schools first and being their first priority. Just when you drive into our driveway and you see that police car parked there is a very powerful statement that there is a policeman on campus. And Officer Rooney is a regular face. He's a friend. He takes his job extremely seriously, but he's not ordinary. He works very hard to love our kids, and they love him in return. And so, as a school administrator, unfortunately, every day you think about the darkest day, and I know that I have a partner in the building that is going to do his job if that day was to come. And so I respect his job highly, and I respect him as a person more in the way he goes about his business. We take our drills very seriously. The chief is there for every drill. And I am very thankful to be an administrator in Old Saybrook, where the resources are there every day to keep our kids and our families safe. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. Police commissioners, any questions for the principals? You don't often get to interact with them.
No, I'm set.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Great. And so now, Madam Superintendent. It's your turn.
Thanks, Chief,
You're welcome.
and thank you for having us with board members and all of our administrative team here this evening. And thanks to the administrators for participating. I know a number of you kept getting thrown off. They're all dealing with thunderstorms where they are. I just want to say that really perhaps in response to Eileen Baker's question about appropriateness for each age group, I have the luxury of going into all three schools and seeing these people do their work at each school. And while I'm sure your background training is very regimented, the three people work very differently. And that's appropriate because they're working with very different, not only are the children different in each of the schools, the staff is very different. You know, our administrative team, they're all in the places where they should be. They match the building and the age group of kids and the people in that building. And these folks, whether you're even aware of it or not, you've done the same thing yourselves. You are each appropriate for the building and, you know, out in front of the building, saying hello to the kids to get off the bus, out playing with the kids, coaching the kids, and showing up at prom, but knowing how to show up at prom and not, you know, not getting in too close and not hanging up too far back. So I have to say that that is an advantage. I've participated in some conversations with politicians and others who are interested in dialing back or dismantling SRO programs. And while I think that their intentions are to make people feel more comfortable, I would say that that would certainly have the reverse impact in Old Saybrook because this community has come to at first accept and then rely on, as you've heard the administrators talk about, the school resource officer program. It's a source of comfort, I think, universally to our staff and students. I know that the staff says that to us all the time. And the fact that they're never, under any circumstances, pulled from our buildings, there's always an officer in our buildings, is a great comfort. And Krista alluded to, Dr. Bachman alluded to, not only the fact that you are safe, but the appearance of being safe. And both of those matter when you're asking people to send their children to you every day. We certainly learned that lesson during COVID. Make it feel safe and people will feel safe. So that's important. I think everybody's talked about most of the components of our relationship that matter, except for maybe the other side of the issue. So while we share information all the time to make our children's lives better, we're also very careful about sharing information. So a question was asked earlier, when do we get the police involved? If we have a student matter, and let's say it's caught on one of our videos, well, one of these people will look at the video. They will not invite the school resource officer to look at it unless they identify a crime. For a number of reasons. One is educational records, including discipline records, are kept very separate. There's a firewall between that and almost anything else going on, certainly in a police issue. You know, as I said, however, if it spills over into a potential crime, that's when we get the police involved. Same is true on the police side. If something happens at night or on the weekend that could spill back over into the schools, they're going to share that with us so that we can work best with the kids. But if there's something that shouldn't be shared with us, then they're going to keep that to themselves as well. And so we have developed a very easy kind of connection around those things. And so there's a lot of talk about Nexus. And so I wanted to talk about firewalls too, because those exist too. I think that the other thing I would say is that listening to the DARE program, there's support for our health program and some of the work that they do. That's another added bonus. And there's value added to that. And I certainly do think that our children getting to know police officers in a very friendly, very, you know, amicable, kind of one of the community way at such a young age has been really helpful to our kids. And what's interesting is if you pull into anyone at the parking lots, they just seem like affable, jovial people, but we all know what their training allows them to do and what they're willing to do. It doesn't match what you see every day, but it's nice to know that that's in the background. That is a huge benefit to me, as you might imagine, really since Columbine. Education has changed. I definitely don't sleep all those nights before school starts because the responsibility is pretty awesome, pretty powerful. And I sleep a little better knowing that I'm here in Old Saybrook, where I'm fortunate enough to have this kind of support.
There are school districts and municipalities where the police chief and the superintendent either don't know each other or don't talk. And COVID, one of the things that I think was a benefit to the town's response to that is the close working relationship that we had and still have with the school district. Our relationship pre-COVID helped us do fantastic things for the school district during COVID, and that has only strengthened our relationships post-COVID. So knowing that I can call Jan at any hour of the day, and she can call me at any hour of the day. Sometimes I think she calls a little bit too early, and I think that's just,
Well, I was
trying
just
to
gonna
get me.
say, I've got one from like 10 o'clock at night one night.
That's good.
I'm the morning person, he's the night person.
But it's important that we feel comfortable to do that, because if this relationship didn't exist, the relationship between the SROs and the staff in the school would be strained. So it's important for us as leaders, her of the district, me of the department, to make sure that we're echoing and modeling appropriate relationships between police officers and public school district employees. So I thank Jan for that relationship, because I think it's paramount. Being someone who is an alumni of the Old Saybrook Public School District and now responsible for the safety and security of that very district, it's definitely humbling.
So I have a comment based on some of the things that you shared. One of them is, yes, the state at the state level, they are definitely looking in certain circumstances to dismantle this kind of a program. And I think the reason for that is because the programs that are there in other school districts, they're looking at the most vulnerable kids and policing being different from what we're seeing here. I think one of the things that made me feel really comfortable at the get-go was when you shared that it was a what were the words? Non-enforcement-based program. Because in my mind, that was really what I wanted to hear coming out of this tonight. So thanks for that.
And if I could follow up on that, I know the answer, and I think some of the commissioners do, the Board of Ed should hear it from you. When all that fluffed up last year at the state level, one of the statements was having an SRO in the building increases the chances or increases the number of young people being involved in the court system. Could you respond to that for the public?
Sure. In Old Saybrook, absolutely not true. So outside of the school district, when we make a juvenile arrest, 95, 96, 98% of all of our juvenile arrests in Old Saybrook are diverted, which means as the chief law enforcement officer for our community, I erase the arrest and we send them to youth and family services. Maybe there's some community service that's done either in the public school district or the estuary council or somewhere, because we want kids to learn from their mistakes. We don't want them to be penalized. So the non-enforcement based program should be what those communities should deploy to reverse the opinions of their citizens, right? So if you have a cop in a school that's arresting middle school kids, it's just never going to work. That cop's never going to have credibility with those kids in the school. Did we have to make arrests of middle school kids last year? Yes, for the right reasons. But that also gave the police department and the community a little bit more credibility because we solved an issue and made the school campus a little bit safer. So there are times when there has to be arrests, but those are few and far between. They're not done by the SROs. And I'm very against having young kids enter the criminal justice system too early. It does nothing for them.
The second thing I'll just add, if you could respond to, Sergeant Gavin arrives at her shift, but there's often a car there already. If you could maybe, again, I believe all the commissioners know why that is, but to make sure all the members of the Board of Ed know why that is.
Sure, and I don't think we mentioned that, so thank you. So in our in-kind report, there's a lot of money there for traffic services. So we have a police officer at the school before 0-hour classes start. Those are classes in a student's schedule that pre the academic day, I guess is the best way to explain it. So when faculty for those classes arrive and then the students arrive, there's a police car in the parking lot. So we make sure the high school campus is safe before people arrive. We also direct traffic in the middle school parking lot for parent drop-off, in addition to the SRO being on campus. And at all three schools, all available day shift personnel are at all morning drop-off and all afternoon pickup. So if there's nothing else going on in town, every police resource is on the campus. So last year when there were issues, you would hear people on the news saying, the police are increasing their presence on school campuses. We couldn't do that because we're already there. And that's something that was, we laughed about it on the phone. Like I couldn't possibly add anyone else. They're all there already. And it's all welcomed. It's not by parents like, oh my God, the cops are there. If we have something going on and all the cops aren't there, we get questions. Where are the cops? How come the cop wasn't in this parking lot or across the street? And so I think that speaks volumes to the program.
Plus just directing like traffic in general, especially a good one.
Goodwin School,
Oh,
yes.
boy.
Yes, if parents could put their kids on the bus, we would be a big fan of that. Big fan of that.
Yeah, I'll second that.
That's right.
We have a bus driver shortage, so I don't have enough buses.
What was that? There's like 8 buses and then 300 Suburbans that drop off kids.
And if I can add, too, it's nice to see kids riding, I mean, this is there's a lot of kids riding bicycles to school.
That's awesome.
And you don't see that in other towns, and it's so nice to see that.
Yeah.
At an early age.
And so, just to conclude, and then obviously more questions or comments if anyone has them. I want you to leave this presentation, and if you're not, I want you to drill me on questions. I want you to leave this presentation knowing a couple things. We have the right people in place to take care of our kids. We have the right equipment at our disposal to take care of our kids. We have the proper amount of professional development if we need to use our training to take care of our kids. And we care. We literally care, not just about the community, but about the safety and security and the well-being of every single student in this school district. That is a top-down message, and it's received bottom-up and acted out every single day. And we're very, very proud of that. And we try to raise the bar every single year. So any other questions, comments, concerns, suggestions?
Some comment. So as an educator of the deaf and hard of hearing, my parents were deaf, grandparents were deaf. There's a law in terms of that from the state of Connecticut that when we write a plan, those students that are deaf and hard of hearing, that use sign language, need to really know about the various codes. And so that's something that has to be written up part of the Department of Special Services. And so that's just something to know that it's that important, because those families get concerned, say you have to evacuate, let's just say. Or say, we're like you're in Saybrook. Let's say you're like in New Haven or Hartford, somebody goes to the bathroom, right? They're not gonna necessarily hear, we gotta evacuate. And so there's situations that, definitely take some priority to be able to know, okay, Eileen's in the bathroom and, she's not gonna hear this, so we need to go after and make sure that we know where all these people are, because just as you were saying, Mike, that when these things happen, you have to be able to act, the spur of the moment, unless you have a list and know who's where. Somebody could very well get left in the building, not intentionally, but just because of all the, the emotion that's behind it.
Can I just clarify one thing? I think Jill kind of did. I just want Superintendent Crucio, not Crucio.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I'm thinking Pasquarelli all of a sudden. I'm gonna call you Denise. On this level, I don't think any of us here consider ourselves politicians, but we've always wholeheartedly supported the police SRO program and all the equipment that is needed. And that talk on the state level, that had a lot to do with SROs in the school versus cops in the school, and that was a lot of inner city, and I think we're fortunate that we don't have that situation here.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, and I want to be really clear. I think that the people who were engaging those conversations at the state and national level, I think their intentions were good. I think they were thinking of a certain types of communities and certain types of policing, and I just brought that up because not because I had any concern about Old Saybrook, but because I wanted to put that on the table, that I know there is that sentiment there, but I don't think we share it as educators in this setting. And I can't speak for other communities. Now, I have no idea what their relationships are like with their police officers, their police department. And there may be good cause for concern, but it doesn't exist here.
Okay, good.
There should be a model,
Right.
for other districts.
Right. Well, we not only have the relationship piece, but our size is certainly an advantage, right? We have this small community where people do watch out for each other. And I do think all of those things play to our advantage. And the police officer you see in your school may be somebody you see after school, someplace else, directing traffic at a parade. And the kids are connecting with them in all those sort of very organic ways. And I think that is an advantage of, as you said, relationships, but also size.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Thank you for this. It was great.
Eileen?
I'm just gonna say that, being on the school board for as many years as I have, we've seen the population of students coming in and their families with English as a second language. And I think you had alluded to it, but I think that being able to have the individuals that are the SROs, in the building, even if you know a few words, parents will always like, "Oh, they know how to speak Spanish," even if it's just a little goodbye, but there's a sense of confidence and that builds, and I just wanted to mention that.
How many years on the board?
34.
34 years on the Board of Education. Very impressive.
Thank you very much to all the members of the board, administrators, principals, and thank you to Officer Dwyer, Oresco, Gabrielli, Rooney, Sergeant Mikowski, and Chief Captain Perry. I just want to say, and my nieces and nephews didn't ever get to be in school with Officer Oresco or Rooney, but they absolutely love Officer Gabrielli. They can't say enough about you. That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you,
And
team.
we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. It's up to you guys if you want to stay for the rest of our meeting or if we need to totally up to you. I know, it's long. Some of us might want to.
Yeah.
So
Just the door.
you just know you have to push that
Yeah. I got you.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Thank you guys. If you, Larry,
Does it? Okay. It was better that way from my chaotic standpoint. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
You know what I mean? I had the whole.
So he's been a part of it.
All right, take care. You want to be on the board of ed and all different?
No, she got
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm not gonna say I'm any better. Okay, next topic.
Nice.
They each have their own,
The best job.
Yeah. Like this, there's a lot of good work.
And the kids are excited for Halloween already.
Take Josh.
Yeah,
out of
yes,
that.
I love my costumes because like 3 years ago, I bought them costumes in probably August and then I completely changed my mind. So I still-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. The water.
Good night.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Nice seeing you.
Thank you, guys.
Have you been in town for a while?
It's so great to go because sometimes
Okay.
you have to order them, you have to order them so far.
Yeah.
Good. The town needs
I know,
more
there's
here.
so-
I mean, that's
Like
what
Noah's
makes
going
difference,
back to work, either wants to be an army person or Maverick, which he's done before. He did Maverick like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And nobody knew who Maverick
That,
was,
you know,
but
they wanna
everybody
make
like
sure
our
everything
age was like, is he
being done
Maverick?
the way
And it was
that-
like, so cool.
The BOE thing.
And then
so,
Eva, I don't know,
people in
she
town
wasn't
saying,
Ladybug.
you know, a lot of the
Ladybug
hormones
and
are appearances, I'm sure.
What you do.
It's like the stupidest show. My husband and I are constantly like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
She wants to be Ladybug. So.
My nephew's
Making sure
girlfriend's
everything
homeboy
goes
watches
the way
it.
it
He's
needs to.
3. He
That's all the
watches
question.
Blippi. I could like scream. Blippi.
I gotta see that.
Exactly.
It is
really
really
good.
watch it.
Get that all
I was
back.
like, there's
You
a
can't
good
go
one.
to
I'm
the
like,
top
I
of
didn't
the
know
top
that.
I worked with the school. I answered it. But the funniest thing is I set it up and like if a commercial.
That's if they didn't read it in Harvard News already.
I know.
I don't know. And it's because I didn't do it without commercial. You can't take 30 seconds. It's free.
At least 10
I'm like, you don't
10
understand. I did it
conversations.
with my brother. I'm
Which
like,
is fine,
Mark
because
and
that's
I
how I
used to
keep
literally
connected,
be like,
you know?
it's on. It's
There's
like, you have to
some
run
people
to the
from
bathroom,
the
they're commercial.
store.
Oh, yeah. Scream to each other. I'm like, you guys have no
Well,
concept of real life. Then, but they also don't have
take
brands
off.
or products. No, because there's
You
no
can
commercial.
stay
Yeah.
for our
No,
approval.
join the
Yeah,
party.
so good.
Yeah, with commercial, they had no clue like what commercial.
All
was.
good.
For a little
Is
bit.
it? Yeah.
Oh,
I
right.
figured you
They don't know
and,
anything.
Carl got under control. How you doing, Joe? How you
doing?
Good. How's things? Is your house all, back?
Oh, 8 years ago.
Okay, well,
separated.
Have your voice
Screwed up.
I
Should I stay away from this
know.
color?
I'm like, let's go back over.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. My always gets all like, I go to the Dollar Tree and all these decorations.
Yeah.
Windows like.
Yeah. Did anyone come to the house?
No, not mine.
Okay, because I was just saying, nobody comes to our house.
Nobody, it's,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, my brother's
different.
different. But the house is decorated like.
Okay, like,
Okay, I'll find you.
And it's all one door.
But yeah,
I think it's like one door, you know, one window of that door.
It's out the door now.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fine.
Before you-
It's really-
yeah. Well,
It's not-
I'm sure. I
And
don't want to
by
be
the time
crazy.
all these have their backs
I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
but you gotta kind of enjoy it while you can.
Yes,
Yeah,
I got
even though you
some,
don't,
we
you
leave
sort of have to.
a
Yeah, when you look back on it right now.
And I buy our favorite candy, and I'm like, nobody comes to our house.
That's part of our, you know, our.
Oh, you're not government?
You're probably not an old, you're not a student. Yes, have your plan written off.
I
I know.
live like in the.
Or, pay too much money.
Yeah,
my part.
Yeah, no,
Our
I'm
portion
not-
is
I'm
done, that's the problem. We're so
Orchard
nice.
Street,
But
yeah,
I
I'm
bring
right
fresh
there.
air.
Nobody comes to our house. Yes.
And I know a lot of
Nobody
people
comes to our
experience
house. I've lived there for 12 years now.
We actually, I didn't know that first couple of years of being child number one.
Wow.
We did all right, yeah, so.
Yeah.
That was a big year.
Yeah, did you have any of that, Zoom
We go to
type,
my friend's house, she lives on, and we go across.
classwork, or did she just there?
She was there, she graduated
Yeah, we go to
in
Travis
2020,
Park.
all that
Yeah,
horrible
that's
end of year for
And then
seniors.
there's some.
Didn't get freshman orientation, there's
Yeah.
first on campus, a lot of kids down, going around, that's 3 times a week.
That's
And
actually.
they, unlike
Yeah.
many schools.
And there's,
she was
it's also like,
They were there.
and you see your parents.
Yeah,
and
so it was
stuff,
good.
you watch.
That's good, yeah, I mean, if you have everybody isolated on campus, they find their way around real quick and they know what to do from there on out.
My kids know that they have
As opposed to
plans,
kind of coming back and forth.
So I did know that.
Yeah, big schools.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't get out.
He's like, we had to have the.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.
Take care. It's good seeing you.
I didn't know the concept.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice. Take a chance.
Yeah.
Put some speed in it. It's not leather and it's stuff.
No. Well, okay, well, I guess, see, I can't please everyone.
Okay, everybody's back, right? Yeah.
We'll do this with our thumbs moderate.
There you go, that's fine.
No. Oh. No, that's okay. Okay, next thing on the agenda is discussion and possible action on the meeting minutes from August 22nd, 2022. Entertain motion.
Yes.
Oh, actually, we back on recording?
Yes, we have not stopped.
Oh,
Okay. Oh, good.
good to know that. Oh,
I move to approve the minutes.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Good job, Jen.
Okay, moving on to executive reports.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening once again. So real quickly on the fiscal year 23 operating budget, there's a couple of things that you might have seen and maybe you're going to ask me questions on. So let me see if I can head them off. You'll notice under field services and support services, there's a line item that deducts from a non-existing budget workman's compensation. But if you know, on our third part of our budget, that's where all the workman compensation money is. So town hall will eventually reconcile that. So there's not actually a negative on one of those other two parts, field services and support services. It will come out of the proper budget. You'll also notice a line item which has appeared, much to our surprise, called advanced payroll.
Yeah.
So what happened was the town has reset how it issues payroll. And so the police department used to be current. In other words, if you got a check on Friday, that check was for working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that check issue date of Friday. Now we're doing everything in arrears. And so in order to do that, the town had to theoretically front everyone 1 week of pay. And there are conditions on how the town gets that pay back. You can give them sick time, vacation time, or not accept your last paycheck when you leave work, because you would get that 1 week after your last day. So we'll be in communication with the town hall. No other department has had to absorb that. That's come from a different line item on the municipal side, and I'm sure by the end of the fiscal year, that will certainly be cleared up. Obviously, you and I are both concerned about our legal line item and the expenditures. However, I do not see an end in sight with that. So I believe that we'll keep incurring legal expenses as we've dealt with some pretty serious things. Hopefully, the seriousness of things will settle down for the rest of the year. But it was important for us to have proper representation during our last two very significant and unprecedented personnel matters.
Question, maybe addressing this in the upcoming budget by increasing that line item might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. I never used to on this issue. But clearly, as personnel issues are arising and becoming more frequent, not just in Old Saybrook, but everywhere, we probably need more of a line item than $7,500. That can go pretty darn quick, as everyone has witnessed. Any questions? Yes.
Okay, so, and you probably went over this before, but in the general expenditures. Thank you. The other equipment, what was that for?
So if you
Is that
go.
for the cars?
No,
Oh.
no. So if you go into that budget book that I give you, each one of these line items has a full detailed description of what they relate back to. So I would refer you to that. But other equipment can be things like our copy machines or small miscellaneous equipment, if we have to buy some office equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So if you go back and cross-reference with that description, if I had my budget book here, I'd open it up and read it to you. That's really the best way. That becomes the Bible of what we're allowed to do with those line items.
So are we done for the year with that? Are we tapped out?
No, so remember our budget, our,
Sorry, she's
Which
talking about
one?
the last other equipment for general expenditures. that you
oh,
said, yes.
that is the
Okay.
payment on our police cars.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so that's made in July.
okay,
Yeah, and so no other expenditures come from that for the remainder of the fiscal year.
okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay, and then finally, the uniform cleaning in field service, no, in support service. Nobody's used it yet.
So uniform and cleaning, remember, is the purchase of new uniforms as well as the cleaning of uniforms. So I'm sure we probably have a bill pending at the dry cleaners for our support
Yeah,
services.
and field service has used theirs. Yeah, I was wondering if people are watching on dirty
Yep,
uniforms.
and soon you'll hear me talk about a new dispatcher that we're hiring,
Okay.
she'll need uniforms.
Okay.
So you'll see some debits in those categories.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any questions?
Nope. All budget accounts. So we've given you the traditional printout. We've showed you the accounts that have had any changes since your last meeting. They're highlighted in white. The blue is no change, white is changes. And it looks like a majority of those were deposits.
I'm really liking this, the new way to do this. It saves so much time on these. On the canine, what is that, new line? At the end?
Yeah, so Uline, we had to purchase some equipment that the dog needs for its narcotics training, little tiny canisters that the different narcotics go into to be hidden for the dog to be able to find them and then subsequently eat. Because the dog only eats when it finds narcotics in a training scenario.
They do it all in stores, Shelby. I wasn't familiar with that.
I just have it not about numbers on the operating account, but law enforcement fund, last I know, are we missing something on that road because Chairman Keeney's no longer here? Is that something we're gonna discuss that?
So it's always the sitting chairman. So Chairman Wilcox will be the chairman of.
Okay, and Carl, you're on that.
No.
Someone.
So he was only, he would only, so it's
the
right, so it's the chairman of the police commission, the president of the union, and a designee from the board of selectmen made by the first selectman.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think it is Matt.
Any other questions about Sergeant Gallo? Okay, personnel matters.
So as you all know, Sergeant Hackett has resigned. He took a job with the Old Lyme Police Department. So we wish him very well. Sergeant Hackett's been with us for a long time. He was a police explorer and then a dispatcher, part-time dispatcher, and then hired as a patrolman and then promoted to patrol sergeant. One of the things that has always impressed me the most about Sergeant Hackett is he is a very dedicated family man. And he has always made sacrifices for his family throughout his career, which again has always impressed me. And so I think that his new position is going to enhance his quality of life over in Lyme, where he lives. So we'll be able to watch his kids grow up a little bit better and be able to go to school events while working, et cetera, et cetera. So we certainly wish him well in his new endeavors. Our custodian, Pat Hanley, is still out and utilizing his built-up personal leave time. He is doing much better. So once again, a nice comment of public encouragement for Pat to stay on the path, work with his doctors and therapists, and hopefully we'll see him back soon. We have hired a new dispatcher, Catherine Sobas. She comes to us with some really nice certifications and some experience. So she begins in the beginning of October. She'll go through our orientation, and then she'll be assigned to Public Safety Dispatcher Dan Adams for her training, her field training in dispatch. As you saw in my email, Zach Catherine, who is the gentleman that you hired at your last meeting, has decided that he no longer wants to be in law enforcement. So he had a pretty short career of less than a month, but never actually hired. He was supposed to go to the academy in the next couple of weeks, and obviously not going because he's withdrawn. And I think that's it for the status of our members. So currently, before your executive session, if that goes well, we currently have 4 vacancies, 4 full-time patrolman vacancies.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you. So we're in the same exact spot as we were last time. We had some auctions end that did not end successfully. So we've put them back out to auction at a little bit lower base price, but still above our trade-in value. We did have one auction that ended, and it turned out, I believe, to be a scam. So someone won the auction, and then they were going back and forth with us, and it got very, very strange. It was the auction. It was very, very bizarre. So the auction company had to get involved, and I thought, being the police chief, I was not going to get scammed over one of our cars. So we still remain, remember, $5,000. We're at $37,200 with a bunch of cars left. We have 2 active auctions. I'm hoping by the end of the week, we're going to add a sedan and maybe one more patrol vehicle. If they don't go, then I'll be coming back to the commission next month and starting to say, listen, here's my proposal. You know, this is what we can get for the cars. I do believe we're certainly going to meet our requirement of $45,000 easily. But then we'll have conversations on if you want to sell a car for less than the trade-in value was listed a couple of years ago. There's been some question out in the community about us selling the vehicles with the police radios in them. And so I thought I'd just take a second to address that. So number one, these police radios, the programming has been wiped from them. So there's no access to any of our frequencies. And the reason why the town is disposing of the radios is because they've not only reached end of life, they've reached end of service life. So the flipping of the fleet has nothing to do with the radios. We started replacing portable radios here and there that were out of service life, a mobile radio here and there when it was out of service life. And we purchased all these radios outside of the fleet purchase because it's just part of the operation. It's not safe for us to have radios in a police car that if they break, they can't be fixed. And I don't believe I'm going on eBay to buy parts for our first responder type vehicles. So that is the reason. Additionally, it costs us money. So there's no reason I have in my mind to hire someone to dismantle the police car to then just sell it. And so if we can sell it with everything in it, it's fine. Wayland, those lights were donated in the first place. They don't want them back. And so it's easiest, as I described a couple months ago, just to dispose of the vehicle as is. But we're not getting rid of any equipment that any other department in town could use or that is still valuable to the police operation. So I just wanted to address that.
Have any municipalities purchased any cars?
Not yet.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, canine update.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about this briefly. I know there was some emails going around. I spent some time speaking either by email or by phone to some of the commission members. So listen, I just kind of wanted to lower the temperature on this topic. So number one, we are not rushing into replacing the second canine handler. This is a process. The process is delineated by PAC's practice. And it gives me the authority of appointment through the collective bargaining agreement. So that's something that the town and the union have negotiated over. When we choose a new canine handler, it is a change of life for that handler. One of the circumstances might be they might have to move. And so in the collective bargaining agreement, as I'm sure many of you are aware, it requires the canine handler to live within 15 miles of the town of Old Saybrook. Otherwise, they can't take the canine car home with the canine in it. And so the individual that's interested is going to have to make a life choice to move closer to the community if he wants to accept the position. Additionally, we don't just say, here's your dog, go to school. There's a bonding period with your new dog. And so the officer that's chosen will be given the canine and they'll have a 2-3 month bonding experience to make sure that they're a match before they go to a pretty intensive school. And so there was a patrol dog school, which is the school that we would need, that was starting the beginning of September. If I was rushing it, it'd be done. The person would be in the school. I'm not looking for the spring class. I'm actually looking for next September because the candidate that I have, who I believe will excel in the position, is going to need that time, not only to gain some more experience on the road, but to make that life choice to move residences, which is a big deal for someone, and then to be able to get the dog and acclimate. There's been some questions on why we're just not cross-training our existing Labrador Retriever. I had some conversations with Carol. Carol, I'm still looking to find some sort of article. But our Labrador Retriever is a food reward dog, which means that they only get food, the dog only gets fed when it does its job. And so every day, days of work, days off, Detective First Class Williams has to put training narcotics in a room, in a car, somewhere for the dog to go find and get a couple kibbles. So that happens all day long. Tracking dogs, German Shepherds, are normally ball reward. We can't change the reward method of the dog. It doesn't know that. So the lab might be able to be trained to track, but it would still be food reward for tracking, and it could confuse the lab. So some dogs are very successful at being cross-training. Some only learn the new skill and forget the old skill. I don't want to risk that with our narcotics dog because we have a very good narcotics canine. Additionally, when the dog is cross-trained, it needs twice as much professional development, which means Detective First Class Williams would be out of his detective position more each month to do the required training. And I don't want to lose him from that area. So next month, and speaking with the chairman, we are going to do a brief workshop on the canine. You'll meet Sky, you'll get to see some of the things that she gets to do. And I plan on elaborating more on these issues. But I firmly believe that the power of appointment for the canine officer lies with me as the chief of police. The authority with the police commission on the canine program relies within budgeting, right? The $10,000 stipend, federally mandated stipend for feeding and grooming. The dog gets donated. The food and vet care comes out of our off-budget line item and a little bit in the budget line item. So the police commission could choose not to fund it, right, for fiscal year 24. And I think that we should have that dialogue, that collaborative discussion. And I think that next meeting, you'll hear from Detective First Class Williams on his concerns about cross-training the dog. And so a good leader listens to his people, and I'm hearing them loud and clear. So there will not be a new dog handler showing up with a new dog at next month's meeting. I want everyone to rest assured.
So Chief, I think the reason for concern is, oh my God, these are not the same chairs. I rewatched the video of, when you and Schultz initially, wanted to get a lab and all of that. And you guys had both, said that the dog would be a tracking dog as well as a narcotic dog.
Absolutely.
Gave all, the training, 6 weeks. And so I think we're just confused as to why didn't that happen? And I mean, obviously, it was your first lab, everybody's learning stuff, I totally understand. So I think that's just, next week, next month.
Yeah, but let me address it quickly. So in
Yeah.
that presentation, I said that I foresee the future canine program in Old Saybrook always being one German Shepherd and one lab. And traditionally, we had cross-trained our dogs to be as versatile as possible.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was hoping that we would have our one cross-trained Shepherd tracking narcotics and one cross-trained lab tracking in narcotics.
Yeah.
Not that one would replace the other. And now I'm of the mindset, listening to the canine handler, that that might just not be a good idea. And with my theory that we're still going to have one German Shepherd team and one lab team, I'm thinking about not cross-training the German Shepherd. And so we would have one patrol tracking dog and one Labrador Retriever narcotics dog. That way, there's not dual professional development going on, and I'm not losing people from the work schedule as often to do the training.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's.
I think it's all communication.
Exactly.
Right? And so I appreciate the questions Carol gave me, and I appreciate our conversation. I think we learned a lot. So in looking for articles, we're not becoming as successful as we hope, because every trainer who gets paid to train a lab to get cross-trained says it's great and it works, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really going to concentrate on what my handler's saying and the research that he's done by speaking to other handlers that have attempted cross-training. But you can ask him those questions next month when he's here.
Yeah, I'd rather, thank you for what you've told us so far, but the intent was that Sean would be here for this whole presentation. Okay. Do you have anything else on the canine?
I do not.
Okay, professional development update.
Yeah, a couple of quick things. Obviously, we've done our back to school active shooter training. I think you've heard enough about that. Myself and the captain attended the statutorily mandated legal update training, the annual legal update training, for all the new laws and new case law that we need to know about. And we held a leadership team meeting about a week and a half ago.
Any questions? Okay, activity report. Is everybody looked at that? Do you have any comments about any of this before I ask a question?
I don't. I think it's working well. Again, it's nothing we manipulate. We actually get it sent to us, and then we photocopy it and put it in your packet. So it literally has no human interaction from our department. This has just now become a standardized report from our next gen system, tailored to what you folks told us is important for you to review.
Clarifying question. Is this a report of how the call came in or how it actually turned out to be?
This is how the call came in. So sheet one is how the dispatcher used that caller interrogation software and what it came out to be. And then we have other reports that show if a call type was changed.
What is the community policing administrative?
Sure. So community policing, let's say cop drives, stops at a lemonade stand, spends $1.25 for some really overly sweet lemonade, interacts with some kids, takes a selfie and drives off. They document that.
Okay, so do you think it should be higher?
No, because I don't think, I'm not so sure. It's become a status now.
Okay,
So I would see it more on a status report than an actual incident number.
then here?
Yeah, because the incident numbers go into those types of incident numbers are pulled out when we do our staffing analysis. And so it's become more of a employee status, what they're doing, than taking a separate call for service number or an incident number and documenting what they did. So some of this, remember, you're seeing transition between next gen turned live and us changing our operation into that advanced statusing system.
Because to me, these look really low, and I'm like, only one in 6 months? Like, there has to be something.
Right, and so what's the last time that there was one?
I don't, September, it just says September, there was only one.
Right, yeah, but you see the other months is really low, so.
Yeah,
we're
and
s-
then January's 8. and
Right,
like,
so we're statusing more than we're taking separate numbers.
Yeah.
What does miscellaneous refer to?
So that's the junk draw, right? I mean, so that, yeah, so the junk draw, I can pull that protocol and send it to you. And you can see the different things that come out in miscellaneous, but it's generally everything that can't be put into any of these other buckets.
Okay, and as far as alarms go, there's, the total on that is 374.
Those are just burglar alarms.
Okay, so they're not false alarms.
Yes, some of them
They
could certainly
could
be. Oh, yeah.
Are people penalized for repeat?
No, there's no alarm ordinance in the town of Old Saybrook. And so in order to be penalized or charged, there would have to be a town ordinance, obviously established at town meeting.
Why would it have to be established at town meeting?
Because that's how ordinances are created.
But
The legislative body has to vote on them, and the legislative body in Old Saybrook is the citizens.
so you can't make a policy change that says, you know, you get 2 free false alarms because you forget to set it, or there's a malfunction. Number 3, you begin to get charged.
Carol, people complain I already have too much authority. Now you want me to create a thing that we go to the 3rd alarm and I'm charging you $25. No, that literally, it would have to be a town ordinance. Yeah,
So are there alarms directly right to the police department?
well, yes, but that's more of municipal facilities. There's no private alarms that come.
Because like our private alarm, we just set it, and if there's a problem, I get a text and I have to say cancel it if I screwed up and need it go off.
Yeah, that's yours. Some people are called the police first. You have yours set up to call you first.
But like if we, trying to think of an example, I think it's crazy that.
So, also in robberies and carjackings, that's number 126. It says there's 0. But didn't Fitzgerald's painting trucks get like all their catalog printers stolen off of them?
So that would not be a robbery
That's
or a
not a
carjacking.
robbery. So
That would be a
what would
larceny.
that be under?
Larceny.
Larceny. Oh.
Carjacking is, you're in the parking lot of
Yeah,
Stop and
no,
Shop,
I
I jump in with a gun and
I
say,
just
drive,
assumed it was all
Callie,
car.
drive.
I just assumed it
Or
was
get
all
out,
car.
or get out.
I got it. Just wanted to say
Sorry.
thank you for including this in the packet.
Yeah.
You're very
It
welcome.
was helpful to see it ahead of time and go through it. Is this posted online with the rest of the
It
stuff?
is. Yeah, it's in the packet online.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions on that safety report?
Carol had her.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
I think, no, that's okay. I think that last month, the chairperson asked to include some information on the use of dogs.
Right, and so we had an offline, that was through our offline conversation, that wasn't online. So there's something called a canine card that's part of the next gen system. And so Detective First Class Williams is starting to use that every time he's training or deploying the canine asset. We don't keep data when we could have possibly used it, right? So if we're at a burglary and someone fled on foot and dropped things, if we have a scent dog, a patrol dog that it can track, we can deploy the German Shepherd to find anything that has human scent on it. So anything the person dropped, we'd be able to find. Also works for lost keys. If we don't have that dog, we don't document and say, oh, we would have used the dog if it was here. It just requires more manpower. So sometimes our dogs add efficiency to the operation.
So bottom line, are you going to start including like when you use the lab, when Sky works, or?
Yeah, so when the lab is deployed, we'll be keeping that data.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we'll be getting it.
If you guys want canine data, we can start doing that, but that's not. I think you can appreciate, we're probably not using their narcotics dog several times a day.
Oh, I hope not.
Right, you don't want us to do that, right? That we'd be in the world of hurt if that was the status of our community. So I think if you're looking for big stats for the dog to either justify or not justify another dog, I don't think it's going to give you the argument that you need or support the argument that you have on either side of that spectrum.
I think I would just be interested in the number of times the dog does get used and like what it gets used for. So not for like well, let's get rid of the dog, or don't get the dog, just more for information. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there will be some times we don't disclose that to the commission at a public meeting, because sometimes the narcotics dog is used in an ongoing narcotics investigation. Right, I mean, so you can put yourself in that mindset.
Okay. Any other questions on activities?
No.
Okay, correspondence.
I have all the
We
stuff.
only did that we have is the gentleman had emailed us about the traffic on Ferry Road, and the chief has already taken care of that.
Yeah, and so just real quick, Madam Vice Chair, if you guys get something like that, get that to me right away, because I want to be responsive to that person. So if they think the commission is the avenue to make a complaint, I'm not interested in correcting their mindset. I'd rather just deal with the issue at hand. So if you forward that to me, I can make sure that the shift supervisor assigns an asset.
The head of Main Street, quick question.
Yeah.
The light at the head of Main Street, is that, it's a state road, is the state?
State is in charge of that, yes.
Who do you talk to?
What are you looking to do?
I've seen a half a dozen people almost get run down in that crosswalk there from people turning right. at the head of Main Street.
Right on red means.
So, you know.
Slow down a bunch.
So there
It's
is
scary
a,
when
yeah,
You're
so
sitting at the light there and you're like, no, don't go.
Yeah. There is a plan. I know the town's applying for funds. I don't know if it's a grant or we're getting the funds to redo some of the crosswalks on Main Street and add the flashing signs. So if you would push a button on either side of the street, which would cause a sign in the median
Say
to
no
flash.
right turn.
I don't know
No.
if that's, I don't know if that end of the road is slated for that, but I know that the crosswalks are there, but I can ask and see if that's.
I was down in Florida. I'm like, there's a sign that lights up when somebody hits the crosswalk that says no right turn. And I'm thinking, geez, that would work really well.
Yeah.
At Main Street.
You know, we're gonna
It's the
see
sign, but I mean.
potentially an amazing amount of development in the next 2 years on the west end of town. So we have that, I don't think it's gonna be a grocery store anymore, but some sort of retail space and 2 or 3 drive-through restaurants on 166, right over the I-95 bridge heading to Westbrook. We're going to see potentially a convenience store, gas pumps, and 4 or 5 fast food restaurants with drive-throughs on the big Y side of Route 1. So the hotel just sold, there's that plot of land where the house got taken down. So that whole area there has some plans for development. When I have a concrete application, I'll bring them to you. And then obviously the potential of Whole Foods, that process might be changing a little bit in there. Not as many as the pocket restaurants out in front because the anticipated parking needed for Whole Foods. So they'll be able to do less pad restaurants or pad retail, and they'll have to keep more for parking. So, but that whole side of town, when you think about it, that's a lot of stuff happening there.
Restaurants. Great. Okay,
Thanks.
well, there's no public here, do we have anybody online? And who am I asking? You or Larry?
There aren't currently any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion that we move into executive session for the purpose of interviewing patrolman candidates and invite, inviting, she's here and Captain Barry.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we're back in executive session. Moving on to item number 9, discussion and possible action to make an appointment to the position of patrolman.
I'd like to move that we hire candidate Wyatt Novak, position of the patrolman, pending the successful completion of any additional hiring and certification at a date determined by the chief of police.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'd like to make a motion that we hire Connor Egan to position of patrolman candidate trainee following successful completion of remaining hiring elements at a date determined by the chief of police.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, next item, comments from the chief of police.
Good this evening.
Okay, comments from commissioners.
I'm good. I have one thing. So I actually went on the website a couple weeks. I mean, I've been on it a couple times. I I noticed that there are some things that need to be updated on the police website. Like the K-9, Benny is still our dog for the K-9. Officer Barnes is still, the SRO and head of the DARE program. It's just, certain things like that that I feel.
It's all time.
Yeah.
It's just all time.
I know it takes a while. I mean, we haven't had, I don't know if we've had an officer of the year, but the last one was 2019. Just certain things like that just might even boost like public morale, even within the police department. And I did go on police app and I noticed that when you click on our website, it says page not found. So it's little things like that that could just maybe help and for even just finding officers in general and their morale. That's all. Yeah.
My only comment is thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
This is my first meeting as really a place meeting. I appreciate everybody's patience.
Yeah.
So, you did great. I'd like to take entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?